everyone, and welcome back to the EcoTour Adventures Wildlife Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Tenley Thompson, and we've got some fantastic footage to show you that guides have been taking all week throughout the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So how this is going to work is we're going to show you some amazing footage that's been going on all over the region and in Jackson Hole. Then we've got 2 trivia questions for you at the end of this week's broadcast, including a chance to win a $200 gift card. And then finally, I'll be answering your questions live here on this EcoTours broadcast about any kind of naturalist questions you might have. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Our big news this week, as always, is grizzly bears. It seems like the last couple weeks the big news has been grizzly bears, but that does in fact make a lot of sense because this is grizzly bear breeding season, and it's the time of year when grizzly bears are coming down onto the valley floor, finding new mates, and also bringing their new cubs, which are called cubs of the year, and their yearling cubs down into the valley to feed on spring bulbs, and newly this week on some elk as well. Let's start off with grizzly bear 610, who I like to nickname Troublemaker because she does like to seem to get herself into some trouble sometimes. She is famous grizzly bear 399's daughter, and she was out this week putting on a little bit of a show with her 2 cubs that were born last year. You can see that these cubs are getting pretty good at learning to eat on their own, and everything's going pretty well with the 3 of them. They should be ready to go on their own by next year, but in the meantime, these cubs have a lot to learn from their mother as she takes them through the annual ritual where they have almost 42 different food resources that they eat. And remember, 80% of a grizzly bear's diet is vegetarian, and so these cubs actually have to learn where to go, when, at what time of year to get the best nutrition, the best body fat reserves that'll keep them strong through the winter. So good job on grizzly bear 610. She's doing a pretty fantastic job with these guys, and they look great. That's pretty awesome, but in the meantime, grizzly bear 610's mother, grizzly bear 399, has been putting on a tremendous show over the last couple weeks. She has 4 young koi, or as we call them, cubs of the year. Let's check in with her. EcoTour Adventures guide and naturalist Maddie actually took this footage last night, where 399 had killed an elk calf and was feeding on it with these 4 young cubs. This is happening right around sunset, and 399 is famous for her excellent hunting skills that she uses every spring to hunt elk in the open sagebrush. Now, elk have been gathering in the nursery flats of Grand Teton National Park for thousands of years, and 399's old age makes her very wise about where to go and what strategies to use to be successful. It's a skill that she's been able to pass on to all of her cubs, and she continues to pass it on to these 4 today. Now, many of her descendants are particularly good elk calf hunters. Hunting elk calves is not easy, and it can take years to perfect. And most bears fail most of the time, but 399 is pretty famous for being pretty successful. You can see these cubs are looking out in the distance, and that's because the mother elk of this calf continue to stay nearby after the kill and continue to try to lure 399 and the cubs off. There she is crossing across the field of view. Luckily, these cubs stayed close because it's not unusual for a mother elk to attack a bear cub to get the mother to stop the hunt of its calf. And a mother elk is very capable of killing one of these cubs. So the good news is everything looks good with these cubs. Unfortunate, of course, about the elk calf, but that is the cycle of life, and we're glad that they're going to have a meal and continue to do well. So really fun news with 399 on her fresh elk calf, 610 foraging just a couple miles down the road from her. And then, of course, let's shift over to the other famous grizzly bear family in Grand Teton National Park, which is the family of 793. 793 is more commonly known by her nickname Blondie, and I've been very concerned actually this spring. I didn't want to say anything, but nobody had seen Blondie yet. And in my nearly 15 years of guiding, it's not unusual for Blondie to make a late appearance. In fact, there were a couple years where she didn't make an appearance at all. But because she's my favorite bear, she does make me nervous when she doesn't show up when the other female grizzlies come down to the valley floor. Well, we've got really big news. Blondie's doing fine. She looks good. In fact, she looks like she's grown quite a lot over the winter. But not only that, Blondie's got a brand new little itty bitty koi or cub of the year of her own. Look how cute this little guy is. Now, we've been seeing a lot of Blondie's grown cubs, but this is really exciting to see Blondie herself and see her with that new little cub. Now, if you're trying to tell your bears apart, $3.99 you might notice has those brown ear tags. 610 has those red ear tags, although they may have fallen off. I'll have to double check on that. And then Blondie here also has these double red ear tags. If you look carefully, you might be able to see them. She's known for her wide, broad silver back. The only other female bear that I know of in Grand Teton National Park who has quite as much of a broad silver back is $3.99, and that's because of her immense age. Blondie is much, much younger, but still has that lovely light color and has since she was a little cub. Now, Blondie's known for breeding with a dark-colored male and producing these awfully dark-colored cubs, which is sort of funny because her name is Blondie. And this cub is no different. He's really dark-colored, but that doesn't mean that he's going to look that way in the long run. A lot of these cubs look significantly different as cubs than they would as a 5-year-old or even a 3-year-old. The difference between a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, that can completely change color. So doesn't necessarily mean that she bred with her tall, dark, handsome male that she's bred with in the past, but it could maybe be suggestive of that. We're really glad to see the two of these guys doing really, really well, and I hope that they'll put a little bit of a show on for us over the coming weeks. Blondie's famous for not sticking around for too long. So I got a chance to go out and actually see Blondie on Monday. I had to make a special trip because she is my favorite. And I do want to remind everybody, we want to stay 100 yards away from any bears. That's for their protection and your protection. A lot of excited people out there, but we got to give these guys their distance. It's really, really important for the bears and for their cubs so that they don't learn bad habits. In the meantime, we've got more information on Blondie's subadult cubs. Those subadult cubs are causing quite the kerfluffle. First of all, generally speaking, when a female bear goes ahead and kicks her cubs out to go be the subadults, it's the most dangerous period of life for them. Right between the age of about 2.5, 3 years old to 5-year-olds is the greatest mortality of what's called an adult bear. Once they're off, they're on their own, away from their mother, and they're learning the world, it's when they're most likely to get into trouble with humans. So we definitely have been interested to see how these guys are doing. Unfortunately, one of these cubs looks like he got in maybe a little bit of a tussle with a porcupine. He's the one on the left here, and he doesn't put his head up very much in this video, but if you look really carefully, right up near his right eye, you're going to see there's some porcupine quills in there. We're definitely concerned about that. That could be a real problem for this young bear. Porcupine quills, of course, do burrow in, and unfortunately that eye does look a little bit infected. The Park Service believes pretty strongly, by taking a good look at things, at least that's the word through the grapevine, that the eye itself has not been punctured, but we're hopeful that, you know, this bear is going to be able to overcome this deficit young in its life and go on and be a fantastic bear. There are many, many bears in Grand Teton and Yellowstone who've been disfigured or have gone through some hardship when they're quite young, who've gone on to live very, very long lives, including a famous one up in Yellowstone called Scarface, who certainly was no beauty, but had a very, very long life despite of it. So doesn't mean things are necessarily in trouble, but we'll continue to keep you updated on those two cubs. We're hopeful they're going to stay out of trouble, and we're hopeful those porcupine quills will be able to be resolved relatively soon. So all of that is pretty darn awesome, but we also have a bit of a viral video to share with you all tonight. We're really, really fortunate that Mike Dawes, who runs Jackson Hole Pop, the local popcorn company here in Jackson Hole, was up in Yellowstone this week and got some really, really incredible footage. Let's take a look at that. Oops.
Hi everyone.
That's not it. There we go.
Biologist Tenley here. We were lucky enough to run into some footage that was taken in Yellowstone this week by Michael Dawes, who runs Jackson Hole Pop here in Jackson. If you've never tried that popcorn, pretty delicious. He was nice enough to allow us to go ahead and reuse some of this footage he took up with his family in Yellowstone, kind of sort of near Old Faithful, where this young grizzly is attacking this young bison. Really, really unbelievable stuff. I've personally never seen anything like it. The two were pretty evenly matched up until a certain point, and then the grizzly did eventually exhaust this bison to the point where he did eventually die from his wounds. But a couple kind of interesting things to see that are going on in this video. The first being that this bison is pretty darn intelligent in that he immediately goes for the water. If he can get deep enough in the water where the grizzly's going to have to swim to attack him, that's going to take a lot of the edge off of the grizzly's advantage. So you can see he kind of heads down into the water here and jumps in an attempt to try and get this grizzly off of him. Unfortunately, the water's not quite deep enough and the grizzly's able to continue to persist after this bison. And killing bison is not an easy task for any animal, particularly not a grizzly. They're incredibly well armored. They've even got armoring on the back of their back with that hump. But you can see eventually, of course, the bear was able to just successfully wear this bison down. So thanks very much, Mike Dawes, for letting us use this footage this week. It really is an incredible scene that you captured in Yellowstone.
So a very big thank you to Michael Dawes for that fantastic footage. And if you're ever in Jackson Hole and you have an opportunity to visit the valley, do check out some of that awesome Jackson Hole gourmet popcorn. The Outlaw Cheddar should be illegal. It's so good. It's one of the most fantastic things I think I've ever eaten. You think you've had cheddar popcorn. You've not had cheddar popcorn till you have that Jackson Hole Pop Outlaw Cheddar. Oh my gosh, my mouth is drooling just thinking about it. So thank you guys for that. Isn't that amazing? If you'd like to share this video yourself, like I said, it's gone a little bit viral this morning since we put it on the EcoTours Facebook page. So we do have just that shorter segment available. I think we're over a couple hundred shares at this point. It's pretty fun to see as that goes pretty far and wide. And obviously, like I said earlier, you know, very unfortunate for that young bison calf. That is, unfortunately, how nature works. These are predatory animals, and so it could be a little hard to watch. We do recognize that, but definitely really interesting. Side note, right where that bear was trying to chew on that bison calf, they actually have what's called a spinal process. They've got a bone that sticks straight out of the top of their vertebrae that actually protects their neck, which is part of the reason that that bison did so well for so long. If that bison had been a little bigger, pretty dubious if it would have been if that grizzly would have been successful. So some pretty cool stuff to see there. In the meantime, let's kind of get back towards scenery here. So Mark got a great view of Jackson Lake from about a month ago, and I'd like to show you how much things have changed. This is Jackson Lake this week. Look at the tremendous amount of melt off of snow coming down onto the valley floor. The rivers are just absolutely swollen. There's the Snake River there, definitely full up. And then you'll also see the Gros Ventre River is just overflooding its banks. It's really pretty cool to see. Really, really fantastic how the rivers are doing in the valley this week. Now, our EcoTour guide and owner and naturalist, Taylor, got a chance to see some amazing pronghorn footage this week. Let's check in with him.
Yeah, it's great to see these pronghorn out on Antelope Flats after they've made their approximately 200-mile migration from the Upper Green over the Gros Ventre Mountains and into Grand Teton National Park. This buck walking through the screen, it's a younger buck, has that black patch right below his eye. That darker patch of fur will grow with age, as well as their horns. Oh, look at that scent marking. Yes, these pronghorn, they do have scent glands on their neck, so they will find parcels of vegetation and they'll mark, dropping scent.
So those wildflowers there, that arrowleaf balsam root is just starting to take over the scene pretty near peak. We're going to keep an eye on some of those wildflowers, and hopefully we're going to have a little bit of a segment about all the amazing wildflower activity that's going on next week, where guides have been taking footage of all the fun wildflowers that we've got, because I don't know about the rest of you guys, I love wildflowers. Hopefully you guys do too. Now, where is everybody joining us from? If you'll go ahead and comment in the comment section where in the country or the world you might be joining us from, that would make me pretty psyched, pretty happy. Last week, our record, I think, was Argentina. So we'll see if we've got anybody further away from that. But even if you're just visiting us from somewhere else in Wyoming, we'd love to hear about it, virtually visiting, of course. And then keep in mind, at the end of this program, I'm going to be answering your questions live as well. So if you've got questions that are coming up while we're talking about these different species, go ahead and type those in the comments, and I'll see at the end here if I can get you guys some of the answers, because that's most of the fun of doing this broadcast every week for me, are those good questions. So see if you've got some good ones for me. In the meantime, we've got some really fun footage. This might be my favorite footage of the week. This is really fun. Naturalist Mark got a little bit of a view of some black bear cubs. Let's check in with him.
Earlier this week, we were out in Grand Teton National Park watching a very healthy looking black bear that had 3 tiny little cubs of the year with her. And as this female was foraging, all of a sudden, all 3 cubs decided that they wanted to climb a lodgepole pine. And as these little ones started up the tree, it was one of the cutest things you've ever seen. All 3 of them kept climbing to the very top of the tree. And by the time they made it to the top, they were 45 to 50 feet off the ground, which is incredibly impressive. Now, black bears do have specially adapted claws that are geared towards their ability to climb, and you can see that from a very young age, these tiny little cubs are able to navigate to some incredible heights. Now, not only did these tiny little cubs make it to the top of this lodgepole pine, once they made it to the top, they started getting themselves quite comfortable, and they started literally taking naps on top of each other. It was really a special moment to capture. And these things are just cute as can be. Little teddy bears climbing up the side of this lodgepole pine is something else to see.
Now, I know this broadcast may seem a little bit newborn baby heavy. That's probably for 3 reasons. First of all, I picked the videos. I really like cute newborn animals. Can you blame me? But secondly, it's because it's spring and we've got newborn babies all over the place. That is kind of the big news of what's going out there right now. Everything is giving birth to newborn animals right now, with that lush green growth spreading across the valley floor and up into the mountains. So you'll bear with us if we have to show you more cute baby animals. But this next one is pretty spectacular, and I hope I never get the opportunity to see this in my life, because that would be, of course, an accident, just like this was. So naturalist Sean was out looking for mushrooms, morel mushrooms, kind of like we talked about last week, outside of Grand Teton National Park, and he found an elk calf bedded down in the deeper grasses. And the thing about elk calves is they're trained by their mothers to stay completely silent and not move. And so what can often happen is you'll be walking and you have no idea they're there until you're almost on top of them. And that's what happened to Sean here. Let's check in with him and check this out.
So looking for mushrooms the other day, I came across this little guy, and you can tell he's super freshy. And it's really cool because almost a year ago to the date, I came across an elk calf in the same spot that was just hours old. So I took a quick video, got out of there, and actually from a distance saw Mama reunite, and I got to see this little guy take his first steps. Now, it's really important this time of year. If you see a baby, leave the baby. A lot of people think they're doing a service, picking up that fawn, picking up that calf, picking up that baby bunny. They don't see Mom, but that mom's just off doing her own thing. So leave that baby, take a quick picture, do not disturb, and just head on like I did.
Now, as Sean said, you'd never want to intentionally be getting that close to a newborn baby animal. It was a total accident. And you'll notice I had to repeat the video twice just so we could get a long enough look. Sean was such in a hurry to get out of there. So we're not advocating, of course, that, but we thought you'd enjoy seeing what a brand new baby elk looks like right after it's born. Something really, really tremendous. It's something I certainly enjoyed seeing. Sean did stick around at a distance, about a quarter of a mile away, checking to make sure that the mother did get back in with that calf with no problem, that the calf was standing and nursing, and no problems were witnessed there. But we did want you guys to see that. We've also got some really fun footage of an almost just born moose calf that Kirk found this week. Let's check in with him.
Hey guys, we had a really great opportunity today to observe this moose calf. I think this calf is just a few days old. She's very small. They're born about 35 pounds, but they're exactly where we might expect to find them, hanging out in these lush willows that seem to really come in towards the middle of May. And this is the perfect place and the perfect time to be there because this mama moose is gonna be offered a lot of protection from these green willows, and she's gonna be offered up a lot of nutrients from these fresh greens to help her support her baby. Although this baby's small right now, throughout the summer, this calf might gain anywhere from 2 to 4 pounds each day, weighing as much as 330 pounds in the fall. That's when this calf will be done weaning. But what we'll see between this cow and calf this summer is a really tight bond. They're certainly not a herding species, which means that this calf is going to be sticking close to mom for protection. Eventually they'll spend the summer and fall and winter together, and just a few days before she gives birth again in the coming spring, she'll chase off that young calf and deliver a firm message that it's no longer welcome, because she won't have the energy to take care of both a 1-year-old and a newborn. But as for right now, we're enjoying the sights of these young calves out here right now.
Oh my gosh, the long little legs on that little moose. All right, have you guys had enough baby animals? Have you? Can I show you one more baby animal? Come on. All right, let's check in with Mark, who every week has been checking on a red-tailed hawk nest, and he's got some fun surprises for us this week.
Hi folks, Mark Beil here with EcoTour Adventures. I wanted to give you an update on the status of the red-tailed hawk nest that we've been watching so far this spring. Now, the 2 hawklets that are in the nest were born on the 20th of May, so today marks the 15th day since they were hatched. These 2 young ones are about 1/3 of the way through the 45 to 46 day long period they'll spend in the nest before they take flight for the first time. Now, the mated pair of adults that are raising these young hawklets have been busy, bringing back steady deliveries of food consisting primarily of Uinta ground squirrels. And in this clip, you can actually see one of the hawklets picking at one of the ground squirrels that was delivered by the adults. So as the nesting season continues, I will continue to bring you status updates on these little ones, and we'll keep our eye on them and continue to watch them grow. Should be a lot of fun.
Pretty cool. All right, so remember, we're going to play you just one more of our video of the week. Then we've got our 2 contests, our trivia question, and our chance to win $200 this week. And then, last but not least, I'll be answering your questions live. But don't forget to comment where you're watching from. We'll see who's far enough away, but we'd love to hear about where you're commenting from. Have you been to Jackson Hole before? What was the highlight of your experience? What did you most enjoy seeing? And what would you like to see from us in the future broadcasts? We'd love to hear a little bit more. We do take special requests if we can fulfill them. And we definitely want to make sure we're tailoring this towards our watchers. We appreciate you guys sticking around with us every week. So we're back to Sean, who's our master birder. I don't know if you guys know that, but Sean is one of the best birders I've ever met in my life. And he's actually got another backyard video for you all, since you guys enjoyed the one on Western Tanagers we did 2 weeks ago. Let's check in with him.
So we've been following along with Mark and his nesting birds, and he has a lot of nesting birds in cavities, so natural cavities in trees, either from tree damage or excavated by woodpeckers. What you can see right here is I've placed a nest box which replicates a natural cavity. In my yard, we don't have any natural cavities, so by putting these out, you can entice birds and provide habitat and nesting areas for them. What I've done is simply put a bluebird box, and a lot of different species will utilize that bluebird box. What we have in this one is a house wren. And the cool thing about house wrens is even if you live in the middle of the city, you've got a little bit of green space, those house wrens will nest and sometimes do multiple broods. They also help your insect population as well, so they'll get rid of those critters in your yard or those things that are eating your shrubs. So there's a lot of information online. You just head on the internet, see what you might be able to use. You can hear them singing right there. I think the female's actually on eggs in here right now. And it's been really cool watching the progress. They nested here last year. They did 2 different broods. We'll see again if they do that this year. Part in the truck. It's really cool. So head online, see what you can do. Put those nest boxes up in appropriate places, and you'll be amazed at what can come along.
Thanks, Sean. So, who's your favorite guide this week? What's your favorite guide video? Is there a particular guide, naturalist, or biologist that you'd like to see me co-host the show with, or perhaps to do a question and answer session? Let us know in the comments if you'd like to see that. Would you like to see us broadcast this from a particular location? We're here to do what you'd like to do for your couch vacation every week at 5:30. In the meantime, we've got a big special event this week, which is our Instagram contest. So the way this is going to work is we're really excited. We're almost to 10,000 followers on our Instagram page. Once we reach that 10,000, I think we're within like 20 or something. We're really, really close. We're going to give away a $200 gift card at our EcoTours store, which is good for a wildlife safari, a photography safari, as well as all the things in our online store. Now, let me explain. We created our EcoTours online shop because we were trying to find a way to support our guides and employees and pay for their health insurance during the quarantine and closure that we experienced as part of our COVID safety precautions. Now, we are again operating tours in Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Park, but we're doing so very cautiously. We're doing private trips only, which we've reduced the price of. We're taking a lot of precautions, which means things are still a little bit slow for our guides, and we want to continue to support them. So you can go ahead and check out our online store. It's got amazing Stio merchandise, EcoTour branded items. It's got some Thomas Mangelson photography and prints, some Josh Medden photography and prints, who's our photographer in residence. Lots of goodies made by the guides themselves. My favorite this week are naturalist Elise's bear hats, knitted bear hats. You got to check them out. They're handmade. They are clutch. I already ordered one. But the way you can get a $200 gift card towards a trip or towards anything in the store is you're going to go to the EcoTours Instagram page, and you're going to look for this particular icon. You're going to look for that photo, and you're going to follow the page, and then you're going to go ahead and comment on this particular post. You have to tag 2 friends on Instagram. Now, if you visit our contest page for full contest rules, there's also an additional entry there, so I encourage you to do that. But let me repeat this. To go ahead and get that $200 gift card to our web store, you're going to follow Jackson Hole EcoTours. There's the address right there on the bottom. You're going to find the contest post, which has Grizzly Bear 399 on it, and you're going to tag 2 friends. The winner's going to be chosen after we reach those 10,000 followers, which will probably be in the next 24 hours, I think. So get over there quick while you can get in on this, particularly if you plan on visiting the valley and you might want to go on a trip. Boy, this would be a really good way to knock a chunk of a trip cost off. So definitely worth checking out there. Okay, so that's our first giveaway this week. The second one is our standard giveaway with our Eco Tours trivia question of the week. Now, as always, our trivia question is brought to us by naturalist Maddie, who always comes up with our great questions and has, I gotta say, the best hair I've ever seen. If you're a Jackson local, he's also doing a Wildlife Wednesday weekly roundup broadcast on KMTN 96.9 every week. So do check that out. That's going to be happening every Wednesday as well. But Maddie has a question for you guys this week, and then he's got a video answer that he's going to give us next week with the answer. The question is, are you ready? What is the burned plant that these mule deer are standing in? If you look really carefully, you might be able to figure out. This is from a fire that happened last winter. These mule deer are sitting pretty close to the town of Jackson, which is a good hint. And the question is, what is the plant that they're standing in? You think you know the answer? Go ahead and comment in the comment section with what you think that plant is. I'll tell you, it's a really common plant, and all of the correct answers will be entered into a drawing for a gift card to our Eco Tours web store, which can be used on trips, and it certainly can be used on that merchandise as well. So pretty easy question, I think, this week. Hopefully most of you guys can get the answer and comment in the comment section and win a chance to do some shopping. Those Kira Cassidy owl stickers on the store are also pretty good for any water bottle. I've been spending a little bit too much money at the web store, can you tell? But definitely check that out. So yeah, that's the footage that we've got for you this week. If folks have questions or comments or things that they'd like me to answer live, that's what I'm here for. You've got a biologist at your disposal to answer any questions you might have. Bear with me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look in the comment section. It looks like we've got a lot of comments this week, which makes me really, really happy. Don't forget to tell me where you're watching from, and I'll see if I can't answer some of these questions for you all and tell you live what's going on. So let me see what we've got here. Ooh, lots of good answers for the trivia question. Nicely done, everybody. Oh my, we've got a lot of comments here. Let's see. Okay, we've got a question. What kind of vegetarian things do bears eat? Well, like I said, there's 42 different plant resources that they might take advantage of. This time of year, they're looking for a lot of spring bulbs. I don't know if you saw Grizzly Bear 610, that first video we showed, but she was digging in the ground, and so were the cubs, and they're looking for things like Indian potato plant, spring beauty, some of these big starchy bulbs that they can consume. Later on, maybe in the next month or so, they're going to be going after yampa and yarrow, which tastes a little bit like a wild carrot. That's sometimes what people call it. Some of these bulbs can reach almost an inch across. So picture something like a tulip bulb or a daffodil bulb in size, pretty crunchy, starchy, great carbohydrates, which of course is a great way to gain fat and a really good food resource to produce milk in the early season. So thank you, Elise, for that question. The other big thing that you'll actually oftentimes see them eat is just grass. They're grazers, just like a cow. One of my favorite experiences with guests was up in the northern range of Yellowstone National Park. We'd spent the whole day looking for wolves and bears, and we'd gotten so caught up looking for wolves, we'd spent almost 4 hours watching wolves, that we missed a lot of our opportunities to see some bears. I was feeling a little bummed about that, and we were driving back into Cook City, and we drove by the churchyard, and sitting in the churchyard was maybe the biggest grizzly bear I've ever seen, just mowing the lawn, just eating Kentucky bluegrass, because that's pretty nutritious for a bear. A lot of people really surprised to hear that bears are mostly eating vegetarian matter as their diet. They're not carnivores, they're omnivores, right? They've got those molars and those sharp teeth up front, just like we do. We're omnivores, and we eat both meat and vegetation. So thanks, Elise, for that question. Let's see what else we've got here. Hang on, I'm trying to read as fast as I can. Ooh, lots of folks from all over. This is great. Ooh, people heading out on a trip. All right, Wendy, I hope you get assigned to me and we get to go hang out together. Don is telling us about a time he saw 6 wolves fight off 2 grizzlies from a bison carcass. Wow, Don, that is really, really an incredible event. I worked for years as a wolf and grizzly specific biologist, meaning most of what I did in terms of tours were wolf and grizzly trips. And I've got to tell you, I've seen quite a few wild hunts, but that sounds like a really tremendous one. They're still relatively unusual to see. We oftentimes see wolves on trips, but to see them actively hunting is a really, really special opportunity. Ooh, Wendy. Watched a mom grizz with 2 cubs in Yellowstone on a bison carcass. Wow. Bess asks us, where are the baby pronghorn? Are we seeing any of those? So we have the same thing going on with baby pronghorn that we do with baby elk calves, which is baby pronghorn are expected to be born here in this week, maybe next week, but they lay low and silent and don't move in that sagebrush and tall grass, and they're almost scentless. So to actually see a newborn pronghorn is just like seeing a newborn elk. It's really, really unusual, and you probably don't want to see one because it means if you were walking or you were hiking, you stumbled upon one accidentally, a little bit like Sean did. It's pretty hard to catch one. Now, after they're about 3 or 4 weeks old, what I start to look for actually is a very unusual behavior to give me a hint that there might be some pronghorn fawns nearby. The mother pronghorn, just like the elk, will actually stash her baby in the tall grass and then move out of the area where it is. She won't be anywhere near that animal, the young baby that she's given birth to, so that it doesn't alert any predators in the area that there's one nearby. But if you're driving down the road and there's pronghorn relatively near the road, they'll do something very strange. Instead of walking away from the vehicle, they'll actually walk towards the vehicle. Now, why on earth would they do that? They're trying to lead predators off. So if a predator, and a pronghorn sees humans as a predator, right? Or a vehicle or anything else, starts walking towards me in the coming 3 weeks or so, then of course I want a retreat to a safe distance, right? And then I want to start looking around because I know there's got to be a fawn nearby. There's no good reason for a pronghorn to go ahead and be coming towards humans, right? That would be very, very strange for them to choose to do, unless she's trying to convince me that she's far, far more interesting than what that area that looks empty that she's walking away from is. So if you're ever looking for pronghorn, that could be a good way to find some babies. They are really, really small when they're born, and pronghorn almost always give birth to twins. 2 calves, 2 fawns as we call them, just like deer. And so there's usually 2 babies out there in the grass, and they're raised in nurseries, which is to say 1 or 2 females will actually look after a whole group while the other females graze nearby, and then they'll change shifts, almost like a pronghorn daycare, so to speak. And then you can sort of start to see as they grow a little taller, little ears, or maybe a little top of a head peeking out of the grass. But it's really not until August, maybe September, that it becomes any easier for me to see pronghorn babies because they're so short. They're shorter than all that sagebrush and vegetation that's nearby. So hopefully that gets you a question there. We appreciate that. Thank you, Bess. Oh, wow, people are coming from all over. This is great. Could a moose have more than 1 calf, Rosemary asks. Yes, they can. They definitely can have twins. Generally speaking, in all of Grand Teton National Park, of the entire moose population, we might have 1 female. 1 or 2 years, it's been 2 who has twins. It's pretty darn unusual. It's about as unusual unusual as a horse having twins. So not a very common sighting, but we do see them on occasion, and that's really, really hard for a mother moose to manage. It's hard enough to manage a little moose calf. They have very, very high infant mortality rates, and to manage two and to nurse two is really, really difficult. A little bit like a grizzly bear having 4 cubs is a little bit difficult and relatively unheard of. Just to tell you guys, in my guiding career, there's been maybe 3 females that have had 4 cubs like that 399 is having. So pretty unusual stuff. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate that, Rosemary. Good question. Don Meyer asks the survival rate for those little red-tailed hawks that we saw. And Don, I am sorry to tell you that generally speaking, most baby hawks, except for 1 per nest, tend to die, which is to say red-tailed hawks practice a behavior in nature that may sound a little unpleasant to us, but makes perfect sense if you're a bird of prey, which is to say if more than 1 chick is born in an eagle or osprey or red-tailed hawk or other kind of hawk nest, typically the strongest chick is the one who begs the most for food and is able to be fed the most often. Basically, the parents feed the most active, the most begging of the 2 chicks. And the other chick will oftentimes become quite weak as a result. It sort of is an exponential problem. The less food it gets, the weaker it gets. The weaker it gets, the less it asks for food. And generally speaking, you have 1 surviving chick per nest, although there is an osprey in the valley who's very, very famous for feeding all of her chicks, no matter how many she has, and she does have multiples that survive every year to migrate. So there's exceptions to this rule, right? Nature doesn't like boxes, so I can generalize, but there's always going to be a special occasion. We're going to continue to check in with these red-tailed chicks throughout the season. Mark is going to continue to give us updates, and so we'll see what happens with these 2 little chicks. I want everybody to be prepared that there's going to be 1 probably stronger chick who's going to hopefully fledge, learn to fly, and go on to be a great red-tailed hawk. But there's certainly a chance both of them could survive. The other issue we have to worry about with baby chicks and hawk nests are birds who are going to prey upon them. So things like ravens, even magpies, certainly other hawks and eagles are going to find those chicks a meal. So as long as those parents are diligent, they're guarding that nest, those chicks have a good chance of survival. We certainly hope we're going to have a happy ending and a fledged red-tail, but this is the natural world. We're going to keep you updated regardless, and we'll sort of see how they do throughout the season. So keep tuning in at 5:30 on Wednesdays, and Mark will continue hopefully to keep giving us an update. And much thanks to Mark, who keeps getting some great footage of those chicks, which I understand from Mark is not easy to do. He's got to be pretty far away in a pretty difficult location that takes a little bit of work to get to. So thank you, Mark, for that. Matt has a question. Do bears return to their den after they're done hibernating? And Matt, sort of there's 2 versions of that question, which is to say, do bears hibernate in the same den every year? And the answer is every bear kind of has its own personality. And yes, some bears do return to the same den every year, and some bears make a new den every year. A couple years ago, I was lucky enough in the late summer when there was not going to be a bear around to crawl into a bear den. And I am not a skinny small person, but I'm certainly smaller than a grizzly bear. And I couldn't really fit in there. It's kind of a miracle to me how these monster animals are able to fit into such a small space. But as for, do they use their den now in the spring? Are they going back and forth to the den? And the answer is no. They're definitely not. They're able to make use of all sorts of resources, and those little cubs are able to burrow up into mom in the rain and the snow and stay quite warm with that heavy winter coat. So they are done with the denning now. The denning season, as we call it, is finished, and those cubs are going to stick with mom as she moves from food resource to food resource. So thanks very much, Matt. We certainly appreciate that question. Ooh, Linda went out with Josh in 2018. Can I concede? I want to go out with Josh, but because I have to go do my own trips, I don't get to go out with Josh very often. So somebody needs to book a trip and ask for Josh and I to co-lead, so I get to go get all of Josh's photography tips, because that would be fantastic. We both are professional photographers, but we have really different styles, and I would love to see him work. I might just have to go out on my free time and hang out with Josh. So Josh, if you're hearing this, we got to do that. Don asks, do you think the bear drowned that bison? He says bison calf. It's not a calf, actually. It's likely was born probably 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. So it is an adult. It's just not a full-size adult. It doesn't have the wisdom or the knowledge of a full-size adult. My understanding is, because I wasn't there, no, he didn't drown the bison. He just created enough of wounds that bison was able to bleed out and perish from the prolonged fight. And that's typically how grizzlies, when they're able to kill bison, which is really unusual, but when they're able to do it, it typically is just death from 1,000 cuts, so to speak. They're able to create enough wounds that they're able to basically slow that bison down, exhaust that bison, just basically it runs out of energy. A little morbid, of course, but what I find interesting is how armored bison are. I was talking about that spinal process at the back of the neck, so attacking them there typically is not successful. They have very, very, very large hindquarters, so attacking them there, like you might see a lion do with a wildebeest, not terribly successful. They've got this flap of skin and hair that hangs underneath their neck. And so when you try to bite and attack there as a bear, you're typically just going to get that flap of skin. You're not going to be very successful going for the jugular, so to speak. So that tends to not work very well, which is why it's pretty remarkable when we actually see a bison who's perished from grizzly bears or wolves. They're just incredibly well built to be durable and be able to outlast a predator. And I certainly do see bison in Yellowstone National Park and occasionally in Grand Teton who certainly have been victims of an attack. You can see old scars healing and what have you. But they tend to be really able to survive that too. They can get these large wounds that heal really surprisingly well with no assistance. Don't seem to get infected and do really, really well. So this was a little unusual to actually see the bison not get away. When I first started watching the video, I sort of said, oh, that bear's pretty young and inexperienced. That bison's gonna win. So it was a little bit of a surprise, but I think it just was exhausted. That fight went on, we're told, for 17 minutes. Mike said he was there for about 17, 18 minutes. That's a long time to withstand a grizzly. So thanks very much for that question. We sure appreciate that, Dawn. Oh, Don, are you asking about the elk calf in the $3.99 video? Maddie would know best. He is in the comment section right now. He can answer, but I would assume probably not. That's not normally $3.99 strategy. Where that calf was killed was not really, really close to water that a drowning would work. And that's not typically how grizzly bears would do things. Remember, as I sort of told you, if an animal runs towards water, that's towards a disadvantage for a grizzly bear, particularly if they have to swim. So I wouldn't think so, but I bet you Maddie, who was there and took that footage for us, can go ahead and confirm. What's the survival rate for elk calves? You know, Randy, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but the short version is the vast majority of them survive from year to year. There's a lot of debate out here in the West in what's called cow-calf ratios, which is to say how many calves are born per cow every year, and whether that level goes up and down, and whether predators, weather, exposure, conditions, forage, all those things are affecting that for people who want to hunt elk. And the short answer is, over the long term, if you look over a long period of time, elk calves do pretty darn well. So survival rate is pretty good. It's pretty rare for one of them to get taken out. And they have a really interesting strategy. We talked about this last week, but they all give birth at the same time, hopefully within about a 48-hour period, and they just overwhelm the predators. So if 3,000 elk calves are born all within 48 hours, and in reality, if you think about, you know, greater Yellowstone ecosystem wide, it's a tremendously large number. 50, 60,000 elk calves maybe could be born within a week or two of each other. a bear's only going to be able to pick off, a couple. And those elk calves are able to outrun a grizzly very, very quickly. Elk are really, really fast animals. They can outrun that grizzly relatively fast. So within a couple weeks here, no bear is going to have much success going after elk calves anymore, and they're going to have to transition to their next food source. It's a very temporary bounty for the bears. Because these elk calves very quickly learn how to avoid grizzlies. And like I said, it's a risk for the grizzly mothers as well. I have seen elk attack baby cubs. I've seen them attack 399's cubs to get 399 to stop attacking their calves, and it's very, very effective. So we're sort of fortunate in that case that female did not decide to go after one of 4 of those cubs, because 4 cubs, that's a lot to protect at once. So thank you very much for that question. Rachel says, so the other animals don't come near the baby animals. I'm assuming you're talking about the elk calf and how we try to really make sure we leave them alone, give them their space. It's only when we stumble on them by accident, like Sean did. Well, obviously they're scentless, so predators actually have a really hard time sniffing them out. Grizzlies have a sense of smell that is unbelievable, and they're one of the few animals that's able to smell out elk calves. And wolves can sometimes do it as well, but most other animals aren't going to be very effective at it. And generally speaking, those animals are also going to be too small to consider an elk calf a meal. So while, yes, other animals may be passing through the area, something like a marmot or a rabbit is certainly not going to be too concerned about an elk calf, right? So sometimes you'll see birds of prey definitely take advantage of it, but that's why they sort of stash them in those tall grasses, which is precisely what it makes so hard for humans to see them, so they can hide them from people in the air as well. Audrey says, we were able to photograph a set of twins, I think you mean moose, 2 years ago along the Grovant Road, and fortunate enough to see the same set a year later. I was so excited. I know exactly the ones you're talking about. I have some amazing photographs. We'll have to share sometime. If you're ever back in Jackson, do look me up. I'd love to see your photos. If you want to post a photo in the comments, please do. We'd love to see it. That's really great you had that experience. Rachel asks, do you have to book a trip or do you have walk-ins? Rachel, give us a call and we can certainly set something up with you. We do actively accept bookings every day. We don't have like a walk-in location, so to speak. You have to call us, but you can also reserve online as well. And go ahead and give them a call. They can give you some more information about that. All right. I think I've got all the comments this week. Thank you guys so much for asking some great questions. This is my favorite part of doing things, is to see all these fun comments and questions everybody has. Don't forget, we're here every Wednesday at 5:30 on Facebook Live. So bring your questions for next week as well. Don't forget to comment on our Instagram page. You want to tag 2 friends for that chance to win the $200 gift card. And if you know the answer to Maddie's trivia question, what are those mule deer, what plant that's been burned are they sitting in? Go ahead and make sure you get a question and answer for Maddie as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We sure do appreciate you spending a little bit of your Wednesday with us. We hope you had a great couch vacation, and I hope you guys have a wild week. So long.